So I'm recording this in the July heatwave, and even though I've lived in a subtropical climate for a good few years and I normally thrive in the heat, I'm finding this not just a little bit oppressive. And this is recalling to mind a really outstanding historical novel that I read a few years back by the award-winning contemporary English writer Jim Crace, and it's called Quarantine. Quarantine is set in the oppressive heat of the desert of ancient Judea. In part, it's about a traveller who is about to face his demons in his initiatory 40-day desert wilderness experience. And Jim Crace so captures the painfully oppressive, mind-bogglingly hallucinogenic atmosphere of the relentless heat of the Judean desert that I felt at last I'd entered the stifling ecosphere of which the Son of Man travelled as he faced his quarantine in the desert wilderness. I was so taken with this that I worked with Jim Crace's words to make a film utilising film footage that my son Gabriel had shot, and the music of the fine Stroud singer Tessa McGinn, which she recorded and written for me a few years back. So I hope you enjoy this film. The traveller, a male, was far younger than he might have seemed from a distance. Not much more than an adolescent then. Bare feet make old men of us all, on stony paths at least. But even when he'd reached the softer and more accommodating track above the landfall, he walked not from the shoulders like a seasoned traveller intent on vanquishing the rocks and rises in his path, but cat-like from the hips, his toes extended, pointing forwards, and put down with caution before his heels were committed to the ground. He'd learnt the single lesson of the thorn. His feet were already torn and bruised. So, long legs, long neck, long hands, short leopard steps. And like a leopard he paused frequently, not to rest but to sniff the air, as if he could locate, beyond the sulphur rising in the valley's thermals, that a caravan of camels had passed, that there were gazelles feeding in the thorns, that there was someone dying in the wilderness ahead. He was open-mouthed. He looped his tongue from side to side, circling his lips, tasting the atmosphere for smells. In fact, his sense of smell had been so bludgeoned by the heat and by his thirst that he could not detect the sulphur even. He was parched and faint. His lips were cracked. His legs and back, unused to heat and effort such as this, were aching badly. If he paused to sniff so frequently, that was because he could smell nothing. It worried him. He hoped to clear the blockage in his nose and shift his headache too. He was a traveller called Jesus, from the cooler farming valleys in the north, a Galilean, and not one used to deprivations of this kind. He'd spent the night in straw, a shepherd's paying guest, and had that morning left his bag, his waterskin, his sandals, and his stick where he'd slept. His quarantine would be achieved without the comforts and temptations of clothing and food and water. He'd put his trust in God, as young men do. He would encounter God or die. That was the nose and tail of it. That's why he'd come, to talk directly to his God, to let his God provide the water and the food, or let the devil do its work. It would be a test for all three of them.